Foglands is a roguelike shooter. I'll be going over what the game offers to help you decide if this is one for you. First off, this review covers the VR side of the game and not the FPS non-VR version. It's also worth noting that this review is done after patch 1.0.3. To get started, the game does have a story. It follows Jim, a newly recruited runner, but while out training, your mentor gets killed by a giant worm and it's up to you to kill it before it destroys the entire settlement. Unfortunately, when first encountering this worm, you die, but you're brought back by the stranger who offers you a deal. In common roguelike fashion, the game has you going through various areas, defeating all kinds of enemies until you face the boss. The game has great voice acting and a well-narrated story to follow, which is always a great thing. Personally, to me, the story is one of the strongest aspects, and I think the setting and overall writing is well done and quite unique to the roguelike genre. Gameplay wise, it's just as you can imagine. You go through a variety of areas, taking out enemies and gathering loot, supplies and various collectibles to upgrade your character to help with your runs. There are different weapons to choose from which you will find along your journey, and they do definitely aid the game. With this game you meet a vendor, and here you can purchase various things to help with your run. Movement is very basic. You can walk, sprint, crouch and jump, and that's pretty much it. With the weapons you can also use grenades, wrenches and various other objects to throw at the enemies. There are also buffs that can be found in the form of cards. 3 will appear and you get to choose one. I like the way this was done. There are various boss battles which I didn't mind. I found them to be quite fun and somewhat challenging at times. If you've played any other roguelike, you'll be used to this formula. The gameplay works as intended, but it's nothing new or groundbreaking. As for the graphics and performance, they aren't bad. A lot of the areas are quite dark, as you can expect with it being underground. Some textures were better than others, but overall they're fairly decent. I also really like the character designs. Performance wise, the game ran as intended with no frame drops or crashes. Now for the settings, you have snap and smooth turning plus full locomotion but no teleportation movement, which I don't mind. Fortunately, you can play the game seated, and this is done by toggling it in the options menu. It works fine and I didn't have any issues with it. Now for what I didn't like. Firstly, I thought there were too many screens that fade to black. This happens every time when you go to the next area and I don't see why it's necessary. I found that the melee combat wasn't always fluent. I would get the first hit in and then the next 3 hits wouldn't land. Unfortunately for all the trophy hunters out there isn't a platinum with this one. Overall, the Foglands is just another roguelike, but it doesn't bring anything unique in the sense of gameplay. There were moments that I was pretty hyped, especially with the amazing soundtrack, and I was genuinely having fun. However, as with every roguelike, I think the first few hours are the worst. Once you've got used to the enemies and the areas, you'll start to enjoy it more. Although, if you want a deep and rich story that builds upon its characters in the world, the more you play, then this is it. I usually return to roguelikes for the gameplay, but this one had me coming back for the story, and I really couldn't get enough of it. Fortunately, if stories are your thing, then you can play the game on story mode, which lowers the difficulty and allows you to concentrate more on the amazing narrative that they've built. So, should you get this game? Well, if roguelikes are your genre of choice, then I think you'll enjoy this one. However, if you're not a fan of these style of games or first person shooters, then it's best to avoid this one. That concludes my review of the Foglands. If you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to stick around, as I intend on covering all PSVR2 games, therefore you'll see the new releases as well as the old. Thanks for watching.